Have you lost your job? Have you lost a loved one? Are you exhausted caring for your parents, for your kids? Well, you can find immediate relief when you read Sheila Mack's new #1 bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps. It contains the Boots formula to move from rock bottom back into action in any situation, especially right now. If life has knocked you down, pick yourself up with Bootstraps and Bra Straps. Get your copy at www.sheilamack.com today.
Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio, Mondays at 1 and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila. Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio, Mondays at 1 and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila.
Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and today we have special guest Sarah St. John. Sarah is an entrepreneur, podcaster, online course creator, and author. She has created several startups throughout her entrepreneurial career of over a decade. She currently owns a podcast production agency called PodSeam. She is also the podcast host of Frugalpreneur, building a business on a bootstrapped budget, which aims to show people how to launch and manage an online business on a budget. All right, welcome to the show, Sarah.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay. Well, this show is based on my new book, Bootstrapped and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. And this year, we have been hit with almost every situation. So I'd love if you could share with the audience maybe a time in your life where you had to overcome a tough situation, either in your personal life or in your business, and how you got back on track.
Well, let's see. Yeah, so I started my entrepreneurial journey over a decade ago, and it was in 2008. I had 6 different jobs that year, not at the same time, but throughout the course of the year. And I just realized, I want to be my own boss. I want my own business. And because, being an employee just wasn't working out for me. So I started a photography business, and I realized that while, taking photos of animals and landscapes and architecture I enjoyed that. I didn't like taking pictures of people, but that's where the money was in weddings and portraits. And so I decided to shift over to an online business model. Well, and the bigger issue actually was that the expense of maintenance and upkeep with camera equipment and all that. So I wanted to switch to an online business model, and I tried a bunch of different things like drop shipping, affiliate marketing, blogging. And it was kind of in the process of all that I realized I should write a book called Frugalpreneur, because I was discovering all these free or affordable tools and resources to use to manage a business on a budget, an online business, that is. And then I just got the idea to start a podcast also called Frugalpreneur to kind of coincide with the book. It was just going to be a few episodes, but then I was getting more leverage and traction with the podcast than the book even. So I guess to answer your question, it was probably in 2008 where just having that many jobs and finally coming to the realization that being an employee is not, wasn't for me, I guess. And I wanted to go into business for myself. And then, of course, I did the photography thing, but then realized, that wasn't going to be sustainable or enjoyable for me for long term. So I guess a few different 2008 and then probably 2015, I would say, is when I switched to the online model. And just those experiences, I guess, were kind of tough, and coming to terms with something not working and needing to switch gears.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that happens. And especially when you're starting out, one thing people somehow, they don't see the success as, something that took a few years to get to. It's like, oh, you're so lucky. You just got lucky and had success with this one thing. And it's like, no, you don't know all that went behind it, all the trials and errors and restarts and reboots that are required when you're trying to find a new business or niche that's a good fit for your lifestyle and reaches the people you really want to reach. So that definitely makes a difference. And it sounds like you've created an incredible book and program to help people on a budget who want to start out. And this year, more than ever, we have people that are looking to either start a little side business, or they need to start a full-time business because their regular career ended with COVID. So yes, I'd love to hear more about maybe some suggestions you have for the audience, for people that are trying to start out and they are on one of those shoestring budgets.
Yeah, I think especially right now, like you said, a lot of people losing their jobs or getting their hours cut back. I think it's important to maybe always have a backup. Even if you have a full-time job, it doesn't hurt to start at least a side hustle or some kind of online business on the side and kind of build that up in the event that that full-time job is no longer there. So there's a variety of online business models, and in the book and the podcast as well, I kind of go into detail about the different types and the tools you need. But some of the big ones, I would say, well, I tried drop shipping. I wasn't a big fan of it because, it depends. The problem with drop shipping usually is that the products are from China, so it takes forever to get them. And people are so used to, Amazon 2-day shipping. So, but that's one option. And for people who don't know what that is, that's basically where you are the middleman between the customer and the wholesaler. Amazon is probably a drop shipper of sorts, but basically where you don't have to keep an inventory or anything though. So if someone orders something from your site, like say I was doing baby onesies, and so say it only cost me $1, but I was selling them for $10 or $20. So someone orders on my site, and then I would then turn around and purchase that through the wholesaler. But then they ship it directly to the customer. So that's kind of how that business model works. And then affiliate marketing, I actually still do a little bit of. And I think that's good, especially for any kind of content creator, whether you're a blogger, podcaster, or YouTuber, because basically what that is referring from another company that you use and recommend. And then if that person clicks on the link and they purchase that thing, then you get a commission basically. And so I use that a lot for different things that I use and refer. Amazon even has an affiliate program where now they don't pay much. It's like 3 to 5%. But the nice thing about Amazon is that if some say and look on the book, let's say they don't even buy the book, but they come back like 18 hours later and buy a flat screen TV, as long as they haven't cleared out their cookies, and within 24 hours, that's really awesome.
Okay,
let's see,
have lost her.
Oh.
Again. So let's see if we can get her back. Maybe if okay. Hi. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm here. I didn't even know I got lost. Now I lost you, I think. Hello?
Okay, let's see if we are back. So we were getting into, let's see, is this an okay connection? Let me see if I can hear you.
Okay, I see you and hear you again, but I didn't for a while.
Yes, I left and came back. I guess I'm not sure what's going on with our connection here, but sometimes that happens, and that's something that's really interesting too with business right now online is everybody's going online, and so we have these internet situations. I'm hardwired into a fastest internet you have, so I'm not sure, but it still does whatever it wants sometimes. So we have to work around all these things until I guess technology meets the new speed of life. So it's so different. So you were getting into Amazon shipping and Amazon affiliate, and pay 3 to 5%, and that's where we lost you.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I didn't even know you lost me. So yeah, so they only pay like 3 to 5%. But the nice thing about Amazon is that, say someone clicks on the link for the book, they don't buy it, they come back in 18 hours, and they buy a flat screen TV. As long as they've not cleared their cookies and they come back and buy anything on Amazon within the next 24 hours of clicking your link, you get a commission on any of that. So I think that's the nice thing about Amazon. But
yeah,
most products and services have affiliate programs, and I just love using that as a way to monetize a blog or a podcast.
Yes, that is very helpful and important. And it's something, I mean, if everybody's going to buy it anyway, think about right now, we're getting ready for holiday shopping. And I think depending on what state you're in, some of our states in the US and even Canada, Mexico, they've already started to go into lockdown phase 2. And so with that, it's going to be a lot of online shopping this year for those who can buy things. And so it's great to be able to get plugged in, start now, because there's just a small window of time. And this is where most retail makes most of their income for the entire year. I had gift stores for over 17 years. I started when I was 23, and that was back in the day when it was real stores, physical products. And I dreamt about one day being able to do the drop shipping and all that. I thought, what a fantasy. Wouldn't that be great? And we're here now. It's not 100% automated. There are a couple of new companies that do ship out of the US now, but it is still a little bit of a chore, but it's a lot less work than it used to be to have a gift store. Although standard retail and gift stores is you always make 2.5 times wholesale. So that you're not making that kind of a spread usually with the with the drop shipping situation. But you do that work.
Yeah, and yeah, there are some wholesalers in the United States. The only thing is the profit margin isn't as high because the products are more expensive. So it kind of comes down to profit margin or faster shipping, I guess.
Yes, yes. And so you just have to do your best. And it is hard to compete with the 2-day shipping on Amazon, because it's always like when you need something, you want it now. And and so that does, especially as we get closer to the holidays. And I think there's a way you can coordinate with the Amazon. To sell your drop shipping products through Amazon as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't tried that yet, but that might be the best of both worlds, actually. The best way to do
Yeah.
it.
So there's those two things. And then you have a podcast. What other ways do you have suggestions for people to save money while starting a business this year?
Well, I think the most important thing for an online business getting started would be to have a website. A lot of people think that just having social media is all they need. I actually know people who just have Facebook pages, but the problem with that is that you're on rented land versus owned land.
Mm-hmm.
And you never know with Facebook algorithms. I mean, I think a very small percentage of the people even see your stuff unless you pay to boost it. So it's important to have social media, but you also need a website. And then, which you can get for free other than hosting. Your hosting could be as little as $3 a month. And then a domain. I get my domains at oneandone.com, and they're only $1.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, you could create a logo for free in Canva or hire someone on Fiverr for $5. And then starting an email marketing, start that right away. And there's a few that offer a free plan, but I recently discovered SendFox, which is really good for content creators in particular, like podcasters, bloggers, and YouTubers, because you can take your YouTube link or your blog or podcast RSS feed and put it in there. And then anytime you have a new episode or a new blog or video, it automatically generates a weekly newsletter with that in it.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's free up to 3,000 subscribers. So that's a good way to get started, I think. So really just no matter what you're doing, just a website and social media and an email list to get started for, under $10, $5-10. So that's what I would recommend for any businesses to get started that way. And then, of course, depending on what route you take, there will be other tools and resources beyond that. But
that's great. Yes, and it seems that this year, more than ever, people have had to make these switches, and it is like we were talking about at the beginning of this discussion. It is one of those things where it's trial and error, and you have to see what works and what fits. So if there's a way to find something that's aligned with your passions, with something you feel is part of your mission in life, that's going to make a big difference. It doesn't have to always be that way, but somehow it can be. And I'll give you an example. For me, when I had my gift stores, I needed more employees, and I had a real passion for helping kids that were emancipating out of foster care, because I grew up in the system. And so what I ended up doing was working with the government, and they had a program called Job Training Partnership Act. And with that, they literally paid for me to train these kids nobody wanted to hire them. And they needed that experience. And they also needed money. And I was young myself and just starting out, so I couldn't pay and train and all that. So there was a great way that worked together. And I had over 200 kids come through my training program over all those years. That was the heart of my store. Now, my first store was in Southern California. I paid $5,000 a month rent. It was $1 a square foot, 5,000 square feet. So it was a big store. I needed people. And these kids were incredible. They now have their own businesses, their own children, all this, because it's been a while. But it was the coolest thing, because it was the heart of the store. with that, I ended up buying 4 other buildings. Forget that lease. I didn't like paying $5,000 a month and not being able to build equity. And so I bought the other buildings and paid for them all in a few years with the money coming in from the store. Plus the store had a heart for the people in the community. And that's how, even though it was a gift store, and you think, how can a gift store actually serve people and be in alignment with my vision if it's completely different, but yet somehow you can be creative and make it align and work to do something that's aligned with what your goals and values are. And that, I don't know, that just, I woke up every day and I knew I was making a difference. And I think that's what really blessed the business. And just my happiness, the happiness factor is very costly. If you're just doing work to pay the bills, it's not the same as being involved and somehow making a difference like that.
Yeah, that's great. That's an awesome story. Wow. Yeah, I think it is important that it can't just be about making money,
Mhm.
but that there's a reason or a purpose behind it. And there's a lot of, for some reason, when you tell me that, it reminds me of, I have family up in Iowa, and there's like this little store there called Operation Kindness, I think.
Uh,
Something like that. Anyway, but it employs like handicapped people or people with like learning disabilities and whatnot. No, it was called Handicap Village. Operation Kindness, that's a pet shelter. Anyways, although Handicap Village probably isn't the most politically correct thing to call it now, but this was like years ago.
uh-huh.
But anyway, I just always think that that's neat when, whether you're teaching or employing people that that it might be hard for them to get a regular job, and just having a mission no matter what you're doing.
Yes, make it so if you love earrings or perfume, then sell that. If you love clothing, you had the baby little jumpers for babies. I mean, if you love babies and that's your thing, then that's a fun way to make money, but you're also enjoying something you care about. Or if you love pets, it may be that you sell pet supplies. And so there's so many different ways to have fun with what you're doing when you're making money online and making that transition to an online lifestyle. Sometimes it's difficult now, especially when you have children. You may have kids home and need to do something from home right now because a lot of the schools are either closed or they're starting to reclose again, the ones that were open. And that's kind of tough, especially if you're a single parent or you're the only parent that's going to be home because the other parent is able to go to work still. So that makes it tough. And it may be that maybe you were a stay-at-home mom or dad, and now you need that extra income because your partner or spouse actually lost half of their pay. And so now you got to add that and take care of these kids, because even though they're on the computer, they need management, time management, and supervision. And so that's difficult. One of the things I used to do before the gift store when I had my babies very young was, I have 6 kids. 3 are mine, 3 I fostered to adopt, so they're all mine. But I had to figure out, well, how can I get some extra income at home? And I would do script work. So I would actually edit and work on movie scripts. And I learned so much about writing. It really helped me with my books and different things that I've done now. Just because you're doing hours of it, and it was easy because I could have like one eye on the kids and it was nice. It really, that little extra income was like Christmas money, fun money, that kind of thing. And we really needed it. So that was back in the day when we were barely, like, this is how old my kids are in college now and above. So it was back in the day when we didn't have as much online options as we do now. So it was in that transition time.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that for people, especially right now, I mean, I don't have any children, but I do have a dog though, and he's kind of like a child. But yeah, I think in a way that working from home or having an online business, if you have kids at home, in a way, maybe that's a challenge, more challenging because you're home and not at the office. And so you're having to kind of multitask and take care of the kids while you're working. But at the same time, it at least gives you the ability to be with the kids and to, help them with schoolwork or whatever in between. And the nice thing about an online business usually is that there's some flexibility. It's not like a rigid schedule usually. And if there's a way you can kind of start to make it passive, though not completely passive, nothing's completely passive, but where, you can get systems up and going. And like if you have an online store, maybe you could be selling overnight and wake up and then there's some money and
Yes,
so
nothing
there's
better than passive income or semi-passive. I don't know how passive income is, but it's helpful. And it has been a switch. I mean, I had a whole bunch of Airbnbs and vacation rentals, and then that kind of went south with the COVID. And so there's things that you would think this is tried and true passive income or mostly passive income that even went away this year. So we've had to kind of reboot and reinvent things and how things are done. So it's so interesting, and what a gift that we have the internet and these ways to connect. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about your podcast. You have a podcast program or?
Oh, a production agency.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because just a couple years ago, I didn't even listen to podcasts. I was familiar with it, but I'm one of those people that only likes to listen to music. So when someone starts talking on the radio, I change the channel right away. So I just assumed that I wouldn't like podcasts. But then I started hearing about specific podcasts that sounded interesting to me, like Smart Passive Income and Entrepreneur on Fire and all that. So I started listening to podcasts and got addicted to it because it's so targeted and niche, and it's something that you actually want to hear about. And so then I started thinking, well, maybe I can try doing my own podcast, with that book. And it was in that process that I discovered how much I love it even more. And so I've been podcasting for, I suppose, like a year and a half or so. And I was doing all my own editing and production and the audiograms and the transcriptions and blogs and just everything. And so I decided, and I tend to do this sometimes, is if there's something I'm doing for myself, why not try to get paid and do it for other people?
Nice.
If I'm good at it myself. So then I started that podcast production agency actually just recently with the launch of my third book called PodcastPreneur, which is all about podcasting. And I'm working on a course right now as well. So I'm kind of a podcasting course. So I'm kind of all in now on podcasting, all things podcasting. Nice. I think it's important really for at this point, because podcasting has been around for 15 or 16 years, but it's only been the past year that it's really skyrocketed. I think part of it could be due to COVID and people being at home and starting their own podcasts. But even before COVID, it had really taken off, and a lot of money is being thrown into podcasting, like the whole Joe Rogan and the $100 million Spotify deal and all of this. And even now Amazon's getting into podcasting. And I just feel like, how every business needs a website. I feel like at a certain point, every business is going to need a podcast. And it's just one more way of getting out there, being discovered, people getting more exposure, and people finding you and getting leads and whatnot that way. Because people get to know, like, and trust you through listening to a podcast, listening to you for 30 or 60 minutes, versus with a book or even a YouTube channel that requires their dedicated attention and involves their eyes, and they can't really multitask. And so they might not have as much time to dedicate to it. Whereas with a podcast, you can be driving, you could be doing the dishes, what have you, and consume an hour and not be and not feel like it. So
yes. Yes. And it's really interesting. My book did hit bestseller the first few days it was out, but then it is now selling 2 to 1 on the Audible. So I
Oh,
so I literally went to a studio in Southern California, and they had an apartment. They let me stay in the special apartment, and for an entire week we recorded in my voice. I recorded my book, and it is selling 2 to 1 still. And so that's pretty cool. And it's because people don't have time. They like to listen. A lot of times they'll buy the audio and then they'll want to buy the book to do all the activities in each chapter. There's lots of like self work. And so that's really interesting because I wasn't sure. And usually, I mean, it was kind of fun. I thought it was the coolest experience because I got to be there, and there was about 20 little recording booths, and professional people help you. This is an award-winning studio, I guess, and my publisher sent me there. So I didn't know anything about this recording an audio of a book, but it's a great way. So if you have a book and you're listening and you have a successful book, it's a great way to relaunch a book in a different format. And so I mean, and look, 2 to 1, that's kind of crazy. I did not expect, I just thought it was kind of fun. I got to know a lot of people there. I would say just about everybody except for me. I got to stay at the apartment because everybody else lived in the area, and they all were professional audio recording people. So they didn't, it's not the author reading the book. I guess 90% of the time or 99% of the time or something. But, I figured I'm okay. I got an okay voice. I'm good.
yeah.
I wanted the experience. I just thought it was the funnest thing. And so it depends on, it was a lot of work. You think it's easy. It was a lot of work. We did like 8 hours a day for 5 days.
Wow. Yeah, I've thought about doing an audiobook, and I haven't yet just because of the amount of time it takes. But yeah, I mean, well, I didn't think that it'd be 2 to 1. Wow, that really does say something. Wow.
Yeah.
I guess I'm one of those people. I like listening to podcasts by like reading books, physical books. I don't read on my iPad or any of that stuff, and I don't listen to books. I only read hard copy books. So I think maybe because I haven't gone over into Audible, then kind of like until I went into podcasting, or until I started listening to podcasts, I guess you could say, I didn't really feel the need or desire to do my own. So maybe it would be a similar situation.
It's funny, like my daughter, she and I were both into reading and learning and studying. And so when I told her I was going to do this audiobook, she was like, "Oh, that's nice. Is that like for the blind?" That's all she could fathom was, and there are groups of people. I have a good friend that runs a program called Unblinded, and he's legally blind. He's an incredible person, and he's still one of the top attorneys in the US, and runs this big program to help other people that are losing their sight or just to rebuild their life. And so I love all that he's doing. And there is a whole group that need it for that purpose, but also there's a ton of people that are entrepreneurs. They're busy people. Maybe they're going to work and they love to get in extra time, net time. So like they're cleaning their house, they're driving their kids, they're doing errands, and they're listening to education, to books, and learning that way. And then, I mean, I do that, and I will put books on 2x, like really fast, and you train your brain to listen fast. And you catch up with it, and your brain's able to retain a lot. And then what I like, I'll listen to it slow, and then I'll actually order the physical book and on the ones that I really love. And then some I'll have the book just because I want the book. But because I don't have as much time as I used to, that really has made a difference for me. And it keeps me, like, I do 15 to 30 books a month because I do it that way. And then, and then I'll order probably 5 to 8 that I love. And then I'll resell them on Amazon unless I want to keep them because I'm out of space. And in my house, actually, I have a beautiful place with lots of books, but I have at least 3,000 books. So I try to like not keep every single book in there. And so that's important.
Yeah, what I like about physical books is you can highlight, and then that way you can go back and just look through the highlights to refresh your memory instead of having to read the whole thing again. I actually
Yeah.
read quite a few books a month, like anywhere from, well, probably about 5 to 10, maybe on average.
Yeah, yeah, it's nice to be able to do that and fuel our minds. And there's something about a physical book versus I don't really love the Kindle. I
Mm.
know my book's on Kindle. I've never really gotten into that. I think we have so much screen time that our eyes need a break. And there's a difference for your eyes on a physical book versus the screen. So I don't know. I'm with you on that. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So as far as the podcasting, so you have an agency called PodSeam.
hmm
So how do people get connected with that agency? How does that work?
So that's podseam.com. And basically, if someone just records their podcast and then sends it to me, and then I do literally pretty much everything after that, like the editing, the production, taking out even the ums and the uhs and deep breaths and things like that. A transcript, show notes, audiogram. Now I don't, at least currently, I don't post to social media for them, but I put it all in this portal where they can then go and download all the stuff and put it out to their social media.
Mm.
At a certain point, maybe I'll implement posting, but I'm kind of leery of that because I don't know. It seems like there might be some kind of like liability issues there or privacy issues.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so just they record their podcast, even a video podcast, and then I do the rest basically.
Oh, that's nice. That's great. And it's hard to find. I know there's people that are always looking for help, especially when they're starting out. So it's great to stay connected with you on that. And with the podcast, have you found a difference between podcast? I mean, my show is on radio and then it goes to all the podcast stations as well. And I also live stream to my social. So I'm getting a huge audience that way.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference, or how are you connecting listeners to your podcasts or your people's podcasts?
So social media, and using hashtags and whatnot, but I've gotten so much traffic and stuff just organically because all the all the podcast directories are basically search engines.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and even now Google is transcribing podcasts. So if you were to even go to Google and say, how to whatever, a podcast about that might show up.
Wow.
in the results. And so just searchability actually, but then there's almost kind of like a viral aspect to it, because if someone really likes your podcast, they might tell another friend or person they know to check out that podcast. And then what I found to be especially helpful is like what we're doing now, like whether you have a guest on your show or you're a guest on other people's show, just the connection between hosting and guesting, and reaching each other's audiences and maybe doing like a dual promotion type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that actually is probably the way that reaches the most people in the shortest amount of time. Is just, I mean, even if you don't want to have your own podcast, I definitely recommend being on podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people think, well, I have a podcast, why do I need to be on other podcasts? But I think whether you have a podcast or not, you should be on other podcasts.
Yes. In fact, with my book, I ended up getting on over 50 podcasts and radio shows, and in a ton of articles, all the name brand, I did all that. And I think that's what got it to bestseller really fast. And then a lot of the times I invited those people that interviewed me to come on and be guests on my show. And so then it gave me more people to share about what they're doing. And it's been a blast, especially this year with all this social distancing. I feel so connected with people all over the world now because of this platform. And, it's like this is my social time for me, as well as helping the audience and everything else. It's like we're connecting and learning about what we're doing, and then we figure out ways we can support each other. So it does make a difference. And this year more than ever, we need to connect, stay connected, and keep in mind the audience and that they also need to be connected. One of the things I do want to share that I share every time I'm on a show is, let me ask you a question, Sarah. Have you heard of 211?
I haven't.
See, there you go. So it's about 60-70% of the people that I survey have never heard of this. And 211, you remember 411? You may not. I don't know. Okay, 411 was the information. 211, if you Google 211 and your state or province in Canada, you will get a list of resources. These resources are for everything from getting food, if you're out of food right now, or getting medical care if maybe your health insurance was dropped, getting a new job, helping with mental health issues, support like that, maybe getting out of an abusive situation. All those different resources are all in one place for your state. And I think it's really important to share, just because even if you may, hopefully you'll never need it, I'll never need it, but at least if somebody comes to us and we're able to help them and listen, give them a listening ear, to be able to give them resources to help them further and quickly is going to get them back on track this year even faster, so they can go start their own businesses and have fun and get back on track. You need to get to like a steady ground in order to start building. And so that's something, if you're listening in, just keep 211 in mind. If you're an employer, post that on your wall at work or in your Zoom conference, mention it, because people, maybe they're not going to share at work what's really going on at home, but it's going to affect productivity. It's going to affect everybody. We're so connected, and we spend more time at work than at home right now. Even if we are working from home, we're still virtually at work. And so it's really a good way to help people that takes very little effort, just getting that 211 out. So,
Oh, wow. Was
Yeah.
that started after COVID?
You know what? That's been around a long time. And
Oh.
I found out about it because I interviewed another guest she's a veteran out of the service, and she shared about these resources and 211. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was looking for that. Like, I felt like that's what I've been looking for, because you want to help everybody, but you can't help everybody. But this way you kind of can. In a roundabout way, help people just connecting to a simple number or Google. And when you Google it, you'll be amazed at the services that are available in your state or province.
Wow, that's really cool. I'm going to have to Google that after this, just out of curiosity.
Yeah. So it's just good to have. Okay, so we are coming to the end of our talking time. So I'd love for you to share more about how people can get your books, listen in on your podcast, or join your PodStream program.
Okay, sure. You can actually get all three of my books, the PDF version, for free at thesarahstjohn.com/free. And that's Sarah with an H, and then St. John is STJOHN. And then the easiest thing, I'm on all the podcast directories, but the easiest thing to do would probably be to go to thesarahstjohn.com/podcast. You can listen to it right there. And then also the different subscribe buttons are there for whatever device you're using. And then, like I mentioned, the PodSeam.com, that's the production agency. And then also, if someone's interested in getting started with podcasting and doesn't know where to start, I've created podcastresourcedirectory.com, which is like a growing directory of different like lists of podcast hosts and just all things podcasting for someone that a centralized place people can go to learn about podcasting and what they need.
That's great. All right. Well, thank you again, Sarah, for being a special guest on the show. And we will be back in a moment, so stay tuned. All right.
Thank you.
If you are just tuning in, this is the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you rebuild, reinvent, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and we are here today on NBC's KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. I'd love to share now a short chapter from my book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. And this chapter goes into using the Boots formula for your finances and investing. Take a listen. Chapter 5. Money Matters. Finance. Geneva showed up at my vacation rental with a car full of her belongings. Everything she hadn't been able to fit in her small storage unit down the road. She told me she'd been moving from one vacation rental home to another, occasionally staying at friends' homes in between. She'd felt guided to visit me and had booked my rental for 3 days, but noticed it was available for the month. I don't have all the money at once, she told me. Can I pay as I go? I couldn't help but tell her yes. I knew she was in the right place. After she unpacked and got settled in, we sat outside on the deck for coffee and snacks. Soon, Geneva started to share about her own rock-bottom situation. She told me she used to own a beautiful 3-bedroom home and had been happily married with 2 grown sons. She had worked part-time for the school district and her husband was a props designer. She started to cry a little, but tried to hide it as, with a deep sigh, she continued. Geneva said she really loved that man and thought she had a rock-solid, honest husband. He was a bit of a slob and sometimes got angry with the kids, but he was a good provider and always very loving. She always trusted him and kept herself busy working and raising their kids. One day, the power went out at the house. When Geneva called the company to have a repairman come out, they told her that her service had been turned off due to unpaid bills. When her husband, who'd always paid the bills, got home, he explained that it had been a misunderstanding and he'd taken care of it, putting the bills on autopay so she didn't have to bother with them. Soon after that, Geneva went to make a phone call and discovered that the family's cell phone service had been disconnected. She was upset and concerned, so she drove over to her husband's job site. They told her that he hadn't been assigned to that site that day, even though that's where he told her he'd been working for the past 3 weeks. When he returned home, Geneva asked her husband, "How was work?" "Great," he answered. "We got a lot done and the project should be finished in a week or 2. She asked where he was working, and he told her the same site she had visited earlier that day. That's when it all came out. For most of their marriage, instead of working extra long hours, he was actually visiting his other family. Yes, he had a girlfriend, and together over the last 10 years or so of their marriage, he and she had 3 other children. Geneva had been minding her business, living what she felt was a pretty good and honest life, when boom, the bottom fell out from under her. Then, just like that, her husband left her alone in the shambles of their old life. Because he'd been in charge of their money and paying the bills, Geneva hadn't realized how behind they were. Everywhere she looked, all she saw were final notices and bill collectors. They were upside down on the house. She didn't have enough money to get current on the mortgage, and her credit was ruined. She said she went into a deep depression from the emotional and financial fallout. She just didn't know what to do. She didn't even know where to start. Geneva admitted that she drank too much for a while, oversleeping and calling out from her part-time work. When there was a downsizing wave, she was the first one to get fired. At this point in her story, Geneva was in full tears, with little bits of laughter and waves of anger, too. As she mentioned her ex, she slammed her fist on my park bench. When she came to stay with me, Geneva was working for a temp agency and taking part-time cleaning jobs on the side. She joked about how she'd seen a van advertising a topless maid service and admitted she was inches away from calling to apply just for the extra money. It was a joke, yet it spoke to a serious feeling. How on earth could she ever get ahead? The true cost. Situations we can't control or predict, ones that have serious financial consequences, happen more often than we'd like. We don't want to believe that this can happen to us. It's not something you'd ever want to think about or prepare for. Geneva had certainly never thought it was possible, but if the unexpected happens, you may find yourself in a financial pinch or even a financial catastrophe. Your financial circumstances change throughout your life, but when those changes are accompanied or even caused by a major life shift, that can lead to a rock bottom. Bouncing back from a financial rock bottom consists of 3 steps, which we'll look at in this chapter. Step 1. Evaluate where you are financially. The activity at the end of the chapter walks you through this step. Step 2. Use your resourcefulness to get where you need to be to support yourself and your family if you have children. Step 3. Once you have that stability, you can start looking for other opportunities to invest and potentially grow your money. Face the dragon. Whether you are going through a catastrophic event or financial hardship, the first step is to take an honest look at your financial picture. Maybe your husband did the finances. Maybe you did the finances and he helped do something else, but now you have to take over everything. If you've never had to manage your finances entirely on your own, or even if you have been in charge of your finances, you can learn how to manage them better. When you're going through the finances, it can feel like you have nothing left over after paying your bills. You almost want to give up or not even look. Just throw the bills in a drawer and worry about them when the money shows up. Then, once the drawer is full, you throw them on the floor of the closet, wondering where the money is going to come from. Your financial situation gets worse and worse until you can't even qualify to buy a vacuum. It happens. Financial stress is hard and scary. But there's something really empowering about taking an honest look at your financial situation and learning where to go from here. I call this facing the dragon. If you are behind in your bills, there are ways you can negotiate or make arrangements for your payments. People are so afraid to just pick up the phone and call the bill collector or credit card company. Call American Express and say, "Hey, I had a death in my family and I need more time to pay." Oftentimes, they'll give it to you. If your credit isn't good, I strongly suggest working with a credit repair service. Most of these services will actually write letters to your creditors on your behalf, removing or consolidating payments. After they get down to any bills that cannot be removed, many of them will actually get on a 3-way call and help you go through the negotiations to lower your payments. If you are going about this alone, it may be best to have a friend or family member that you trust get on the line with you or review what to say prior to calling in. I've worked with hundreds of clients who've had to repair their credit to qualify for a home loan or who had to rebuild their score due to a rock bottom scenario. They all said it was far easier than they had imagined and that once they got through the first call or two, they no longer had the stress or fear. Our minds tend to jump to the worst case scenario very quickly. But once we face the dragon, take that really painful first step and do the work, it's a huge relief as some of that stress disappears. Taking this first step will give you a sense of getting back into control as you rebuild your financial house. But it doesn't happen all at once. If this is where you've hit rock bottom, it takes time to get through it and start going back up. What you have to do isn't really hard, but it might take a few days, weeks, or even months of making calls and arranging payment plans until you're back in the driver's seat. Ask for help. Just because you're learning to manage your finances yourself doesn't mean that you won't need help. You don't have to do it all on your own. One way to make a financial situation feel less scary is to get advice on how to handle it. A financial planner, credit counselor, money manager, accountant, or attorney may be able to help you come up with a strategic plan. If you can't afford to see one of these professionals, or if you want to take more control, the activity at the end of this chapter will help you come up with your own plan. And you can visit the resources section of my website, www.sheilamac.com/finances, for links to free, basic financial services. You are disempowered when you don't have a plan. The longer you go without a plan, throwing bills in a drawer, the more you mess up your credit and cause other trouble in your life that you don't need. The sooner you face it and do the work, the better. When you do have that plan in place, you just follow it. It's cleaner that way, and it's empowering. Volume 4. Dear Sheila, I am a newly divorced female, age 43. I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment by myself, and sometimes my daughter shares the space with me in between college semesters. I have a newer car and heavy car payments and live where the cost of living takes up the majority of my income. I run a small accounting business and work odd jobs for extra funds in order to pay my bills. Work takes up so much of my time that my continuing education and social life has suffered. I also want to take some new courses on social media to market my company better. I have low energy and can't seem to get ahead these days. I don't even have time or extra money for online courses, which is really frustrating. I do have a newer boyfriend. We have dated almost 8 months. We were close friends for a couple of years before we started going out during my separation. He's a great guy who also does tax accounting, mostly. His income is seasonal, and so he currently is living with a roommate here in Southern California to keep his costs down. The other night, he brought up the idea of us living together. I really enjoy his company, yet I have no desire to take our relationship to the next level. On the other hand, we would both benefit from reducing expenses and could see if living together would work, which may make or break our relationship. My question, the truth is, I really would not consider my boyfriend for a roommate if finances were not the issue. I have thought this through, and I am still somewhat conflicted, as there seems to be no other options. There aren't any apartments that would cut my living expenses enough so I could quit my extra jobs or take courses to increase my business revenue. I'm afraid if we live together, it could be a costly mistake. Yet if I continue the way my finances are, I will never get ahead. Do you think it would be a mistake? Do you have any other suggestions that may work for us? Signed, Living California Style. Dear Living California Style, it seems to me like there's 2 issues here. The first one is your finances, and the second one is the relationship. So, in your relationship, if you're not ready to move in together, then it is best that you don't. The beauty is that you're both in the same field, so it may be a fun game to play that you both open up a small side business doing accounting together. That way you can grow together, spend time together, do your business together, and learn to get to know each other on that level before committing to moving in with one another. Now, there's also the consideration of your college student daughter who comes and goes and lives in the extra room. And you'd have to think about, your comfort with that. How comfortable would she be having your relationship, your guy move in with you, or how awkward would that be? And so, that's something to also put into the equation. And since you're both accountants, does that add up? And it probably doesn't at this point. So the other thing to think about is the fact that you asked this question already gives you the answer. Because when you're really in love, and it's not that you're not in love, but when you're really in love and you're at the point in the relationship where you're both ready to commit to move in together and move to the next step in a relationship, you don't question it. You're already going to that next step, and it's easy. It's not something you have to give a lot of thought to. So that's your answer. I hope that helps. As always, I wish you life, love. And now I have some homework for you. I would love for you to grab a copy of my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. It is now available on Audible as well as on Amazon and Kindle and at www.sheilamac.com. Just like a pair of boots or a bra. So the formula is designed to help you through any situation.